The vast emptiness of space was filled with the hum of countless ships, but one ship stood alone in the face of an overwhelming threat. The Vigilant, Earth's most powerful warship, was alone in the blackness of space, its weapons powered up, and its crew ready for the challenge ahead. On board, every person knew that their mission was not just about survival. It was about proving something far bigger. Humanity had never been taken seriously in the galactic scale. But today, that would change. As the enormous alien fleet approached, the captain stood on the bridge, staring at the display. His hands were steady, but his heart raced with the weight of the task ahead. The alien fleet was massive, far beyond anything Earth had ever faced before. Hundreds of ships, gleaming with alien technology, moved toward the planet with a single purpose: destruction. They had underestimated humanity, thinking Earth's forces were no match for their might. The aliens had sent a simple message: surrender or perish. But Earth had no intention of surrendering. They had a secret weapon, the Vigilant. Its technology was beyond what the aliens had ever seen. The crew of the Vigilant knew this was their moment, their chance to show the galaxy what humanity was capable of. The captain turned to his crew, his voice calm but filled with determination. "This is our moment," he said. "We show them what happens when they underestimate us. We show them why Earth isn't a place to be feared." The crew nodded, each one focused, each one aware of their role in the fight ahead. They weren't just defending Earth, they were defending their place in the galaxy, and they were going to do it with everything they had. As the alien fleet drew closer, the tension on the bridge was almost unbearable. The Vigilant's weapon systems hummed, ready for action. The sensors picked up the incoming alien ships, their signatures unmistakable. The captain's eyes narrowed. The time for words had passed. He turned to his weapons officer. "Lock on target. All systems are go." With a single command, the warship unleashed its first strike. A beam of pure energy shot from the Vigilant, a blinding light that cut through the darkness of space. The alien fleet didn't expect it. The first ship was obliterated in an instant. The other alien ships began to react, but it was too late. The Vigilant's firepower was unmatched. Each shot was a precise strike, tearing through the alien ships with terrifying accuracy. The aliens had never seen anything like this before. They had expected to overpower humanity with sheer numbers, but they had underestimated the might of Earth's most powerful weapon. The Vigilant's guns kept firing, each shot more devastating than the last. Alien ships were torn apart, their hulls ripped open in the blink of an eye. The aliens tried to retaliate, but their weapons were no match for the Vigilant's defenses. The human warship was like a predator, picking off its prey one by one. The crew watched in stunned silence as the alien fleet crumbled before their eyes. For a moment, it felt like a dream, like they were all watching a video of someone else's victory. But no, it was real. The Vigilant was unstoppable. The aliens hadn't just underestimated the warship, they had completely misjudged humanity itself. The captain's face was impassive as he watched the destruction unfold, but inside, a wave of pride surged through him. He knew this victory would not just be remembered by those on Earth, it would echo across the galaxy. The Vigilant wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of humanity's resilience, their strength, and their refusal to be taken lightly. As the last alien ship fell, the captain gave a small nod of approval. But he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy would soon know what humanity was capable of, and the aliens would never forget the day they underestimated the Vigilant. In the silence that followed, the crew stood at their posts, breathing in the victory. But deep down, they knew the real battle was just starting. The alien fleet was shattered, but somewhere in the galaxy, someone was bound to take notice. They had shown their power, but would it be enough to secure Earth's place in a galaxy full of dangers? Time would tell, but for now, they had won. And that victory would ring through the stars for years to come. You said. The silence of space was broken by a hum of energy, a vibration that seemed to pulse with every heartbeat aboard the Vigilant. After their surprising victory, the crew could hardly believe their eyes. The alien fleet, massive, imposing, and prepared to annihilate Earth, was now nothing more than drifting debris. But the feeling of triumph was fleeting. The crew knew the galaxy would not let this go unnoticed. The aliens, once so sure of their superiority, would surely retaliate. What they didn't know was that the attack on Earth had set off a chain reaction, a signal to the galaxy that humanity was not as defenseless as it seemed. On the bridge, the captain sat back in his chair, staring at the display as the last pieces of the alien fleet floated away. His mind raced. Could this really be over? Had they actually won? He was still in shock. This wasn't supposed to happen. Humanity was supposed to be outmatched, unprepared for the might of the alien fleets. But instead, they had wiped them out in a single strike. The crew looked at him expectantly, each of them knowing the next steps would shape Earth's future in the stars. "The battle's not over," the captain muttered, his voice low but clear. He turned to his crew. "We've taken down one fleet, but I guarantee this won't be the last. The rest of the galaxy is watching." His words hung in the air like a heavy cloud, each person on the bridge knowing that their victory had only drawn attention, and not all of it good. The alien forces had been humiliated, their ships reduced to floating wreckage. But the captain's instincts told him this was far from the end. There would be a cost for what they had done, and that cost would be measured in the lives of countless others. The galaxy wouldn't just forget Earth's power, they would try to crush it, and crush it fast. The sensors began to beep, pulling everyone's attention back to the task at hand. More ships were appearing on the radar, but these weren't the same aliens they had just defeated. No, this new fleet was even larger, more advanced, and more dangerous. It was obvious. The aliens weren't going to take this defeat lightly. The captain's face hardened as he watched the ships move into position, their weapons powering up. They were coming for revenge. The crew members worked quickly, scrambling to prepare for the incoming threat. The tactical officer, his fingers flying across the console, began to analyze the new fleet. "Captain, this isn't just another wave of ships. These are the elites, an entire armada led by their most experienced commanders. They've been called in to take us down, and they won't stop until they do." The tension on the bridge was palpable as the crew worked in perfect unison, knowing that the battle they had won was about to pale in comparison to what was coming next. The Vigilant had proven its power, but would it be enough to face an even more deadly enemy? The captain stood up, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. He didn't flinch as the new alien fleet advanced. Instead, he looked over his crew. They were ready. They had already defied the odds once, and they would do it again. But this time, they wouldn't have the element of surprise. This time, they had to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless than ever before. "Prepare for impact," the captain ordered. "The enemy thinks they can crush us because of their size, but they haven't learned what happens when you underestimate a human." His voice was steady, but beneath the calm exterior, his heart pounded with anticipation. The first wave of the alien fleet was already charging forward, but he wasn't about to back down. The Vigilant's weapons powered up again, its shields flaring bright against the void of space. The captain's hand hovered over the controls, his mind calculating the precise moment to strike. This would be a fight for survival, but humanity had already proven one thing. They weren't going down without a fight. The silence was shattered by the blinding light of laser fire as the first shots from the alien fleet came streaking toward them. But the Vigilant's engines roared to life as it danced through the fire, its weapons returning fire with terrifying accuracy. Alien ships were torn apart in seconds, their debris floating as evidence of humanity's wrath. But this time, the aliens were not as unprepared. The battle quickly escalated, and the Vigilant found itself locked in a fierce struggle, outnumbered but not outmatched. It was clear that the alien fleet was relentless in its pursuit of revenge, but the Vigilant had already proven that it could hold its ground. The captain's eyes remained focused, watching as the battle unfolded before him. With every blast, every strike, the Vigilant showed the galaxy that humanity was no longer a planet to be ignored. As the warship tore through the enemy fleet, a chilling thought crossed the captain's mind. This battle had only just begun. The aliens would come for Earth, but they would also come for the Vigilant, and they would learn the hard way. Humanity would never be intimidated again. The battle raged on, but the Vigilant was not backing down. Every shot fired from the warship was met with fierce retaliation, yet the aliens seemed caught off guard by the sheer tenacity of Earth's crew. Their armada, once so confident in its superiority, was now being picked apart, one ship at a time. But the alien fleet was relentless, and they weren't about to let humanity's small victory go unpunished. The warship was surrounded by fire, energy beams flashing across the sky like shooting stars. But still, the Vigilant pressed forward. On the bridge, the tension was rising. The crew was fighting with everything they had, but the captain could see it in their eyes. This battle was far from over. The alien fleet's numbers were overwhelming, and though they were slowly losing ships, they had the advantage of sheer force. The captain clenched his fists as he watched the radar. More ships were coming, larger ones, better equipped, and they were closing in fast. The aliens had called for reinforcements, and these new arrivals were not like the others. These ships were more advanced, with technology far beyond anything Earth had ever encountered. "They're calling in their elites," the tactical officer said, his voice trained. "These ships are different. They've got more firepower, stronger shields. We're not going to last much longer if we don't do something." The captain didn't respond right away, his mind racing through options. He had thought they might be able to win this fight with sheer power, but he knew now that raw strength alone wouldn't be enough. They had to be smarter. They had to find a way to take down the remaining fleet before these new reinforcements could reach them. The captain turned to his weapons officer. "Can we get a direct hit on the command ship?" he asked, his voice calm despite the growing urgency. The weapons officer quickly analyzed the data, his eyes scanning the readings. "It's risky, sir. The command ship is heavily guarded, but if we target the weak points, we might be able to breach its shields." The captain nodded. The command ship was the heart of the fleet. If they could destroy it, they might have a chance to cripple the entire alien armada. "Do it. Lock on to the command ship and fire everything we got." The crew sprang into action. The Vigilant's weapons systems powered up again, its cannons charging with energy. The captain felt the ship tremble slightly as the first volley of shots launched toward the alien command ship. But the alien ship wasn't caught off guard this time. It was ready, its shields flaring brightly as the energy blasts collided with them. The command ship's defensive systems were formidable, but the Vigilant's firepower was relentless. The battle was far from over, but the captain wasn't giving up. "We've got this," he muttered under his breath. The crew was doing their part, their focus unwavering despite the mounting pressure. For a few tense moments, nothing happened. The command ship's shields held, deflecting shot after shot. But the Vigilant's crew didn't stop. They kept firing, adjusting the aim, focusing on the weak points the weapons officer had identified. Slowly, the shields began to weaken, the command ship's energy flickering under the constant assault. The captain's heart raced as he saw the first cracks in the shields. They were getting closer. "Target the engines," the captain ordered. "Take out their propulsion. Without it, they won't be able to maneuver." The weapons officer gave a sharp nod, and another volley of fire was launched. The massive energy beams cut through the blackness of space, slamming into the alien ship with pinpoint accuracy. For a moment, the battle paused. The alien command ship was visibly damaged, its engines erupting in a blaze of fire and debris. The crew on the Vigilant held their breath, watching the display as the massive alien ship lost its power and began to drift. The captain allowed himself a brief moment of relief, but his focus never wavered. They had taken down the heart of the alien fleet, but there were still plenty of ships left, and they were all closing in. The Vigilant had inflicted a major blow, but the fight was far from over. All remaining ships, focus on the rest of the fleet. Don't let up, the captain ordered. The crew of the Vigilant was determined. They had already faced impossible odds and emerged victorious once. Now, with the command ship destroyed, they pushed forward with even greater resolve. Every shot was precise, every movement calculated. The alien armada, though still powerful, was faltering, its cohesion breaking apart as their command ship was eliminated. The Vigilant continued to tear through the remaining enemy ships, each one falling in quick succession. It was clear the aliens weren't used to losing, and they weren't prepared for the kind of fight the Vigilant had brought to them. The battle might have started as a test of survival, but now it was a full-scale assault on the alien empire's pride. The captain's voice echoed across the bridge as the final shots fired. This is only the beginning. We've shown them what humanity can do. We've earned their respect. But the galaxy is vast, and we are just getting started. The crew knew the truth of his words. The alien fleet had been crushed, but other threats would come. Yet in this moment, the Vigilant had proven one undeniable truth. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The warship Vigilant had delivered a crushing blow to the alien armada, but as the last of their ships disappeared into space dust, a grim realization began to settle over the crew. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's power, and while many would tremble in fear, there were those who would see it as a challenge. The captain knew the true weight of what they had done. This victory had attracted attention from forces far beyond anything humanity could comprehend. The question wasn't whether there would be retaliation, it was when and how. As the bridge crew began to monitor the aftermath, the captain stood, staring out at the now empty space where the alien fleet had once loomed. His hands were clasped behind his back, his face hardened in concentration. Despite the devastation they had caused, the feeling of victory felt hollow. The aliens weren't the only power in the galaxy, and now humanity had earned the wrath of much more than just one vengeful species. "Captain, we're getting a transmission." The communications officer interrupted, his voice tight with urgency. "It's coming through a secure channel. It's not one of ours." The captain turned sharply. He had been expecting this. A part of him wondered if this was it, if the galaxy would be demanding retribution for what they had done. Still, he motioned for the officer to patch it through. The screen flickered to life, and a shadowy figure appeared. Its features were indistinct, but there was no mistaking the ominous presence it exuded. The figure was cloaked in darkness, only the silhouette visible as it spoke. "You think you've won." The voice was cold, chilling. It was a voice full of menace, devoid of any warmth or empathy. "Your foolishness will cost you dearly, human." The captain's eyes narrowed. The message was as clear as the stars in the night sky. The galaxy was not going to let Earth's defiance slide. This was a warning, one that carried with it the promise of vengeance. The captain's pulse quickened as the transmission continued. "You have awakened forces that are not bound by the same laws as your petty battleships. The retaliation will be swift. And when it comes, Earth will be nothing but a memory." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. The crew exchanged looks, the fear in their eyes unmistakable. But the captain didn't flinch. He had heard threats like this before. The galaxy had always underestimated humanity, thinking them weak, fragile. This time, they were wrong. "We'll be ready," the captain said, his voice steady. "Prepare the ship for whatever comes next." But deep down, the captain couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that something far darker was on the horizon. The alien fleet had been decimated, but now, an even greater danger loomed. The forces behind that transmission, whoever they were, sounded like a power unlike anything Earth had ever encountered. Back on the bridge, the tactical officer was already running simulations. "We need to start preparing for the worst. There's no telling who that was or what kind of ships they command." The captain nodded, his eyes fixed on the tactical readout. As the crew continued their work, the hum of the Vigilant's engines served as a constant reminder of the fragile peace they had just secured. The warship's weapon systems powered up, its shields strengthened, and its engines readied for whatever would come next. The bridge lights flickered, and the captain felt the weight of his decision press down on him. They had destroyed one fleet, but now, the galaxy's true power was drawing near. The threat of retaliation was no longer a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And when it came, humanity would be ready. But deep in the captain's heart, there was the haunting knowledge that nothing could ever prepare them for what was coming. The stars outside the window continued to shine, indifferent to the lives being shaped by the events unfolding in their vast depths. But the captain, standing resolutely at the helm of the Vigilant, knew one thing for sure. Humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated. They had survived the first wave of destruction, but the next wave would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Suddenly, the radar blared, and a new signal appeared, faint but growing stronger by the second. The ship's sensors locked onto it, and the crew froze. A new fleet was entering their space, one far larger than anything they had faced before. The captain's voice cut through the tension like a knife. All hands, brace for impact. The first shot from the enemy fleet came without warning, and it was unlike anything the Vigilant had encountered. The power behind it was massive, an entire salvo that shook the ship to its core. The crew scrambled to adjust, but the magnitude of the attack was unlike anything they had been prepared for. The shields held, but barely. The Vigilant trembled, its hull groaning under the strain. For the first time, the crew realized they were not just fighting for their survival, they were fighting for Earth's very existence. The captain watched the alien fleet grow closer. He had no illusions now. This was only the beginning, and the galaxy's fury would come crashing down on Earth with unimaginable force. "We'll make them regret underestimating us," the captain whispered to himself, his jaw clenched. The Vigilant was ready, but was it enough? The Vigilant's shields flickered under the weight of the barrage, the warship groaning as the massive alien fleet closed in. The captain stood at the helm, his hands gripping the edge of the command console, his gaze fixed on the growing enemy armada. Every second, their numbers seemed to increase, their weapons more powerful than anything the Vigilant had faced so far. The crew worked in synchronized chaos around him, pushing the ship's systems to their limits, desperately trying to keep the warship intact. "Enemy vessels are within range," the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with tension. "Their firepower is unlike anything we've seen before, Captain. We're not going to survive another direct hit like that." The captain's mind raced as the sheer magnitude of the threat set in. The aliens weren't just here for revenge. They were here to wipe out humanity once and for all. The fleet they faced was a force that had destroyed civilizations before, and they weren't going to be merciful this time. The captain swallowed hard, but didn't let fear take hold. They had survived this far because they had fought with everything they had. They weren't about to give up now. "Status on our weapons?" he asked, his voice firm but laced with urgency. "We're ready," the weapons officer replied, fingers dancing across the console. "We've made modifications to the energy cannons. They're running at maximum output, but we need to act fast. If we don't get a shot in before they close the gap, we're done for." The captain nodded. His mind shifted gears as he formulated a plan. This wasn't going to be a fight of brute force. They would need to outsmart their enemies, find a weakness, something they could exploit. Humanity wasn't going to win by sheer numbers, but they had ingenuity on their side. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," the captain ordered, his voice unwavering. "Take us around their formation. We need to hit them where they're weakest." The bridge came alive with action as the crew scrambled to carry out the captain's commands. The ship jolted as the engines roared to life, pulling the Vigilant into a sharp turn. The crew braced themselves, the ship's hull vibrating under the strain of the high-speed maneuver. The alien ships followed, closing the gap quickly, their weapons primed and ready. "Captain, they're targeting our engines," the sensors officer shouted. "They're trying to cut off our escape route." The captain's heart pounded in his chest, but his mind stayed sharp. They couldn't let the aliens corner them. If they lost their ability to maneuver, they were dead. He had to think quickly. "Can we get a shot on their command vessel?" the captain asked, eyes flicking toward the tactical readout. The weapons officer hesitated for a moment. "It's risky, sir. Their shields are at full strength, and the command ship is well protected." The captain glanced at the view screen, watching the alien ships close in. The clock was ticking, and every second felt like an eternity. He had no choice. "Take the shot," the captain ordered. "Target the weak points. We don't have time to waste." The weapons officer didn't hesitate. With a few commands, the ship's massive energy cannons powered up, the brilliant blue beams of energy lighting up the dark void of space. The shot was fired with precision, a piercing streak of power aimed directly at the heart of the alien command ship. For a moment, nothing happened. The crew held their breath, the tension in the air almost palpable. Then the first hit came. The beam collided with the alien ship's shields, causing them to flicker and flare with a bright burst of energy. The shields held, for now, but the Vigilant didn't stop firing. They'd learned from their first encounter. Relentless pressure was the only way through. The captain's voice was calm but commanding. "Keep firing. Focus on the shields. We need them down before they can retaliate." The crew followed his orders without question, each shot landing with growing intensity. Slowly, the alien command ship's shields began to buckle under the relentless assault. Another strike, and the shields finally failed. The ship's outer hull was exposed, vulnerable. The weapons officer's voice rang out in victory. "We've breached their defenses, Captain." But just as the crew thought they had the advantage, the alien ships retaliated. A massive salvo of energy blasts streaked through space, tearing toward the Vigilant. The ship rocked violently as the blasts collided with its hull, sending the crew tumbling. Sparks flew from consoles, and the alarms blared. The captain fought to maintain his footing, his eyes never leaving the view screen. "Damage report," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Shields are down to 30%. The tactical officer responded, his hand shaking as he worked the controls. "Hull integrity is holding, but we can't take another hit like that." The captain's heart raced as he weighed their options. They had breached the alien command ship shields, but the cost was staggering. The Vigilant was losing power fast, and the alien fleet wasn't going to stop. It was a race against time, and the captain had no intention of losing. "Focus fire on their engines," the captain ordered. "Take out their propulsion. Without it, they can't chase us." The crew responded in unison. The Vigilant's cannons charged once again, each shot targeted with precision. The energy beams slammed into the alien fleet's engines, and one by one, the massive ships began to lose power. The captain watched as the first enemy vessel's engines went dark, drifting helplessly in space. Then another, and another. The Vigilant's relentless assault was starting to pay off. But the captain knew the battle wasn't over. They had only delayed the inevitable. The alien fleet was regrouping, their retaliation brewing. They had caused damage, but now the true test would begin. "We've got their engines," the weapons officer said, his voice filled with a mix of relief and exhaustion. "They won't be able to chase us now." The captain allowed himself a brief moment of relief before returning to the task at hand. "Prepare to retreat. Get us out of here. Now." The Vigilant's engines roared to life again, pulling the warship into a high-speed retreat. The captain didn't know if they had truly won this battle. But one thing was certain: the galaxy had been reminded of Earth's strength, and humanity would fight to the last to protect what was theirs. As the ship jumped to light speed, the captain glanced at the view screen one last time. The alien fleet had been crippled, but they were far from done. The war was just beginning. The Vigilant emerged from hyperspace, the star-filled expanse stretching out before it like a vast ocean. The crew was exhausted but resolute, their minds still racing from the previous battle. The warship had survived against all odds, but the damage they'd sustained had taken its toll. The captain paced across the bridge, his face lined with tension, knowing they had only bought themselves a temporary reprieve. They couldn't afford to rest. The war was far from over. "Captain," the communications officer spoke, his voice tense, "we're picking up multiple signals. Something is approaching fast." The captain's heart skipped a beat. The last thing they needed was to face another wave of enemy forces. But this time, they were vulnerable, weak from the previous engagement. He couldn't allow the Vigilant to become another casualty. "Can you identify the ships?" the captain asked, already preparing for the worst. The officer worked quickly, scanning the incoming signals. After a moment of silence, he finally spoke again. "It's not one fleet, Captain. It's several. A coalition of ships, but they're not alien." The captain's brow furrowed. "What do you mean, not alien?" The officer's eyes widened, his disbelief palpable. "It's human, sir. The ships are human." A ripple of shock passed through the bridge crew. The captain's mind raced, trying to make sense of the revelation. Why would other human ships be out here? Why weren't they in contact with Earth? "Set a course for their coordinates," the captain ordered, trying to mask his confusion. "We need to meet them. If it's another human fleet, we need to know what's going on." The crew worked quickly, setting the ship on a course to intercept the mysterious fleet. The Vigilant's engines hummed as they cut through space, moving toward the unknown ships. The captain stood by the window, watching the stars blur into streaks as they accelerated. His thoughts swirled with questions. Who were these humans? Why had they come? And more importantly, were they friend or foe? As the Vigilant closed in on the incoming fleet, the captain received a message. The comms officer patched it through, and a familiar voice came through the speakers, though it wasn't one the captain had expected. "This is Admiral Kane of the Galactic Defense Fleet. Stand down, Vigilant. You're in our territory now." The captain's heart skipped again, though this time, the shock was mixed with a sense of recognition. He had heard the name before, but he couldn't place where. "Admiral Kane," the captain asked, his voice steady but confused. "What is the Galactic Defense Fleet? Where are you from?" There was a brief pause before the admiral replied. "We are from Earth, Captain, and we've been watching you. We know what you've done, and we need to talk." The captain's mind spun. Other humans, out here in deep space, seemingly isolated from Earth. It didn't make sense. What did they know? And why hadn't they made contact before? "Talk. About what?" the captain asked, a surge of suspicion rising within him. "Why didn't we hear from you before?" The reply came quickly, but with a hint of gravitas. "We've been monitoring the situation from afar. Earth is not the only player in this game anymore. The galaxy's response to your actions is far more dangerous than you realize. We've been preparing for this moment. Now you have to decide which side you're on." The tension in the bridge increased tenfold as the crew exchanged uneasy glances. The captain's heart pounded in his chest. He knew the galaxy's wrath had been growing, but now, the fate of humanity itself seemed to rest in the balance. Had they made a fatal mistake in taking on the alien fleet without knowing the larger picture? Who were these humans, and what had they been preparing for? "Admiral Kane, what do you mean by that?" the captain pressed. "What side are you talking about?" "There's no time to explain it all in detail, Captain," the admiral responded. "But you need to understand. We've been preparing for war on a scale you've never imagined. And Earth's future is no longer about politics or diplomacy. It's about survival. So I ask you again, what side will you fight for?" The captain's mind raced. Was there another faction of humans out here? Were they aligned with the alien forces, or had they been building their own fleet to defend Earth? Was it possible that Earth had factions of its own? Factions that didn't trust each other and were now on the brink of civil war? He looked at his crew, their faces a mix of confusion, fear, and uncertainty. They had fought valiantly to protect Earth, but now they were caught in a web much more complex than they had ever imagined. Their victory against the alien fleet had come at a cost, and now they were facing the possibility of even greater threats, both external and internal. The captain's jaw tightened as he made his decision. The mission hadn't changed. Humanity had always been about survival, about fighting for their future. If these humans, this galactic defense fleet, had answers, then they would find them. If they had the resources to help, then it was time to join forces. But there was no way they could allow their mission to falter now. Earth was in danger, and it was up to them to make sure it didn't fall. "Admiral Kane," the captain replied, his voice low but determined. "We'll be there. But know this, humanity doesn't needle. We fight for our own. So if you want our help, you better be ready to fight alongside us. And if you stand in our way, we'll show you what we're capable of." There was a brief silence on the line before Admiral Kane's voice came through, cold but with a note of approval. "Very well, Captain. Let's see if you can still stand when this is all over." The comms line went silent, and the crew braced themselves. The mystery of the Galactic Defense Fleet was far from over, but one thing was certain: humanity was no longer the underdog. The lines had been drawn. The future of Earth was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for power. And in this war, humanity would not back down. The Vigilant followed the coordinates Admiral Kane had provided, the crew tense with anticipation. The mystery of the Galactic Defense Fleet weighed heavily on their minds. Who were they? How had they remained hidden for so long? And why had they chosen this moment to reveal themselves? The captain stood at the command console, watching as the vast expanse of space gave way to an enormous station, a structure unlike anything they had ever seen. It wasn't just a station, it was a fortress. As the ship approached, the station's defense grid came to life. Dozens of massive turrets tracking their movement. The message was clear: any sign of hostility would be met with overwhelming force. The Vigilant's crew exchanged uneasy glances, but the captain remained calm. He had faced worse odds before. "Docking request received," the communications officer reported. "They're allowing us to board." The captain nodded. "Take us in." The warship maneuvered toward the station's docking bay, its thrusters firing in controlled bursts. The moment they landed, a squad of heavily armed soldiers awaited them. Their armor was unlike anything standard Earth forces used, sleek, advanced, and clearly built for more than just intimidation. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were something else entirely. The captain and his senior officers disembarked, their footsteps echoing through the cavernous docking bay. Admiral Kane stood at the far end, flanked by two guards. He was older than expected, his face lined with experience, his posture rigid with authority. But his eyes held something else, something far more dangerous than just discipline. He wasn't a politician. He was a warrior. "Captain," Kane said, his voice even but firm. "Welcome to the Bastion." The captain kept his expression neutral. "Quite the operation you have here. Mind telling me what this is all about?" Kane gestured for them to follow. "Walk with me." They moved through the station, passing corridors filled with soldiers, engineers, and tactical officers. Unlike Earth's centralized military, this force operated with a precision that suggested years of planning and preparation. This fleet, this station, exists because Earth was never prepared for what was coming, Kane explained as they walked. "We saw the signs years ago. The galactic powers viewed humanity as weak, something to be controlled or eliminated. The politicians refused to see it. They believed in treaties and negotiations. We knew better." The captain frowned. "So you went rogue, built your own army." Kane stopped and turned to face him. "We didn't go rogue. We did what had to be done. We built an army that could actually defend Earth. And now, after what you've done, the galaxy is finally paying attention. We're at the tipping point, Captain. War is coming, Not just with the enemy you fought, but with all of them. The weight of Kane's words settled in. The war with the alien fleet had only been the beginning. The galaxy had seen humanity's strength, and now they wouldn't sit idly by. "So, what do you want from us?" the captain asked. "You didn't reveal yourselves just to give us a history lesson." Kane smirked. "No, we revealed ourselves because you just changed the course of history. That warship of yours, the Vigilant, it's more than just a symbol now. It's proof that humanity won't be controlled. That's why the Council fears you. That's why they're gathering their fleets." The captain's blood ran cold. "They're preparing for war." Kane nodded. "Yes, and they won't just come for you. They'll come for Earth. They'll come for all of us." The air grew heavy with the weight of what he was saying. Humanity had always fought against the odds, but this wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. This was a war for their place in the galaxy. Kane continued, his voice steady. "You have a choice, Captain. You can go back to Earth, warn them, and hope they listen. Or you can stand with us. We have ships, weapons, and soldiers, but we need leaders. We need warriors." The captain glanced at his crew. They had fought together, bled together, and survived against impossible odds. Now they were being asked to fight an even greater war, one that would decide humanity's future. He turned back to Kane, his jaw tightening with resolve. "If war is coming, then we won't stand by and wait for it. We'll bring the fight to them." Kane's smirk turned into something more. A knowing grin, the look of a man who had just found the missing piece in his battle plan. "Then let's get to work."